And so I promise not to describe the RSA algorithm here.
If you'd like, I could draw it on the board. You guys will be bored to tears, but I still think I could do that, but I won't do it there. But no, go ahead.
It won't be compelling radio,
Let's talk
right?
about progress today.
So we see progress in three areas, and it's interesting. This is sort of a cross between what we see in the government, but also the commercial sector. But we see as I go through these three areas, especially the first two, we see that sort of coming into the government as these initiatives grow. And the first is the use of your mobile device as an authenticator. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of initiatives out there in the commercial space that are doing this. And if you think about it, and you think about the challenges of making authentication not only secure, but easy to use, the cell phone is a perfect place for that technology to go. Just like paying for your coffee in the morning at your local coffee shop, using your cell phone makes sense there. So that's the first thing we see is that cell phone taking on that role. Now, obviously, in the federal space, especially in some of the more sensitive areas, there might be some challenges. But there are also places in the federal sector where it makes absolute sense, especially if you're talking about citizens trying to get access to government resources.
Right.
They're carrying cell phones. It's a natural place to start when you want to provide more secure authentication. The second is around going beyond just the specific means of authentication and looking at the whole process, bringing context into the decision of allowing somebody to get access to data. So, and it sort of works with when I talked about using a cell phone as the authenticator. So when I authenticate, I build up a pattern. I build a picture of how I go about my day, what I do, what I touch on the net, et cetera. Right. So taking that into account when you're trying to decide whether or not it's a legitimate, somebody's making a legitimate effort to get access to data, that makes sense.
So you're separating there the authentication and the privilege. Start with the authentication, now you're authenticated, now what privileges go with that
That's right, that's a very good point, right? Obviously first you want to identify the individual, and then once you identify the individual, you want to decide what they have access to. So taking context into account when you do that is important. Finally, and this is one that I think is extremely important, it's identity and access management governance. Now when I say governance, I mean more than management. So the idea here is that you want to make sure that you know all the identities that are associated with all the people who work for you or work in your organization. You want to know what they have access to, what privileges they have, and then you need to be able to control the assignment and the removal of those access privileges. And when you do that, that's where the governance piece comes in. It's more than just management. It's about making sure that everybody involved in that process agrees on the roles and agrees on what you're trying to achieve. So literally, you have to govern the process. And we see that as a really, really big initiative, and one that's not been...
I think